What's up, Meta Nerds? This video is all about the TIE ap-1, also known as the TIE Mauler. It was manufactured by Sienar Technologies, a subsidiary of Sienar Fleet Systems, who produced the regular TIE fighters. The cost is unknown, but at 6.7 meters or 22 feet, it was about a Jawa longer than a TIE fighter, and with a top speed of 90 kilometers per hour or 56 miles per hour, it was 1.5 times as fast as the treaded tank used by the Separatists, the NR-N99. It used PS4 twin-ion engines, the same engines found in your regular TIE fighter, as the power plant for this tank. The rest of the cockpit was also what you'd see in a TIE LN, except for it did have more firepower, with triple medium blaster cannons up front. The solar array wings were kept, but integrated into the housing for these large treads. It appears like this extra, bulky attachment to the back of the TIE cockpit must convert the ions which are flying out of the engine into a sort of drive mechanism which could get those treads moving. But it didn't just look like a TIE fighter, but it was also deployed in a lot of the same ways as its spacefaring cousin. It didn't have any shielding, or even thick hull plating that you might associate with a tank, and so the TIE Mauler relied a lot more on its speed and maneuverability. We can assume that, like the TIE fighter, these were probably cheap to produce, and the Empire would often deploy them in groups of 5, just to make up for the lack of defensive capabilities, and this also made it so they were visually a much more intimidating force, as rebels would often be ambushed by these quick-moving, laser-firing tanks. As the Rebel Alliance grew throughout the Galactic Civil War, the TIE Maulers started to be deployed in even larger numbers. Imperial commanders would often deploy them in groups of 10 to 15, and creating enormous volleys of laser fire from each of the tank's triple medium blaster cannons. It only had a crew of 1 pilot, and these guns all fired at the same time and at the same location. And so what got this vehicle its name, the TIE Mauler, was when some pilots realized that they could focus their blaster cannon fire on larger rebel vehicles and use their treads to run over rebel soldiers. This was a gruesome act, which struck fear into the rebels that saw this, and this tank gained an infamous reputation amongst the Rebel Alliance. Another terrifying aspect about this vehicle is that it was equipped with core overload technology, which allowed the pilot to turn this vehicle into a big bomb. Other starfighter pilots in the Empire all looked at the TIE fighter pilots as being suicidal, just because of how bare bones their ships were, but the TIE Mauler pilot was trained to make sure that this vehicle self-destructs if it ever found itself near crucial assets or with no hope of escaping. Rebel troops came to identify when this thing was about to go off, and they only had a couple seconds to see if they could destroy the vehicle before it got to them, or if they should just turn the other way and try and get out of its blast radius. But that's it for the TIE Mauler, and the only behind the scenes fact that we have is that it appeared in Star Wars Empire at War, and out of universe, many people started calling it the TIE Mauler because the voice for its pilot sounds a lot like Darth Maul's voice, and the vehicle that replaces the TIE ap-1 was known as the TIE Crawler. So this was like the Maul Crawler, which became the TIE Mauler. So that's it for the TIE ap-1. If you liked it, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you want to check out our social media, or ways that you can help support this channel, be sure to check out the description down below. If you want to see more, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so that you get notifications. But more important than all that, remember, the rebels weren't the only terrorists, and the Force will be with you, always.